Commander Threl'kax of the Sovereign Guard had protected 3 generations of Imperial heirs, survived 17 assassination attempts, and once held a breach point against 40 rebels armed with plasma rifles. He was, by all measurable standards, the most decorated warrior in the Alliance fleet. So why, by all the moons of Kardesh, was he now taking orders about nap time from a human? The creature in question, one Maggie Chen of Earth, stood barely up to his mid-thorax. She had arrived 3 cycles ago, with credentials that read like a technical manual: Interspecies behavioral consultant, specialist in cross-cultural development, expert in juvenile cognitive integration. The royal court had paid enough credits for her services to fund a small military campaign, which made Threl'kax's secondary stomach churn with disgust. She was, quite obviously, a babysitter. An absurdly expensive one. "Commander, the cubs need natural fiber bedding, not these synthetic pods," she said now, tapping her datapad without looking up. Her voice had that particular quality all humans seemed to possess. A combination of confidence and casual disrespect for proper military hierarchy that made his crest feathers stand on end. "Those pods," Threl'kax said, each word carefully measured, "are rated to withstand a direct blast from a pulse cannon. They have built-in atmospheric regulators, medical monitors and emergency transport capabilities." And do they help toddlers sleep? Threl'kax did not dignify that with a response. The Imperial Nursery aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion was, frankly, a masterpiece of engineering and paranoia. 30 layers of security shielding, walls reinforced with meta-steel alloy, automated defense turrets disguised as decorative mobiles. The transparent ceiling offered a view of passing stars while being strong enough to withstand meteor impact. Everything from the self-sterilizing toy blocks to the nutrient-optimized feeding stations represented the pinnacle of Alliance technology. And yet the 3 Imperial cubs, heirs to the most powerful multi-species alliance in 7-star systems, had cried non-stop for the past 15 planetary rotations. Hence, the human. The cubs themselves were currently making high-pitched distress calls that could probably be heard 3 decks away. Prince Kale, the eldest at 4 standard years, had climbed to the top of the recreation tower and refused to come down. Princess Senna kept phasing through solid objects, a delightful ability she had inherited from her mother's species, but had not yet learned to control. And little Prince Thomas had discovered he could make things float, and had chosen to exercise this talent by suspending every piece of furniture 3 feet off the ground. "You know what they need," Maggie said, watching the mayhem with the calm expression of someone who had clearly lost all survival instincts. "A nap. They are on a regimented rest cycle," Threl'kax informed her coldly. 1,400 hours daily, monitored by medical staff. "Right, and how's that working out for you, Commander?" A floating chair chose that moment to crash into a wall. Princess Senna phased halfway through the floor, shrieked and phased back out. Prince Kale began throwing blocks from his tower. Threl'kax's eye membranes twitched. Their parents departed for the treaty summit only 6 cycles ago. They are experiencing separation anxiety. It is temporary. Maggie rolled up her sleeves, which Threl'kax had learned was a human gesture that meant absolutely nothing good was about to happen. "Well, Commander, how about you and your extremely impressive weapons go stand outside and let me do what you paid me to do?" Every instinct Threl'kax possessed screamed at him to refuse. These were the Imperial heirs, future rulers of the Alliance, the genetic legacy of the most important political marriage in recent history. Their safety was his responsibility, his honor, his entire purpose. But they had been screaming for 2 weeks straight. "You have 30 standard minutes," he said, each word tasting like defeat. "I will be monitoring all feeds. If a single scale on their bodies is harmed, if they show any sign of distress beyond current levels, You'll do your job, I get it." Maggie waved him toward the door. 30 minutes. Go drink some coffee, or whatever your species does to relax." Threl'kax did not drink coffee, his species did not relax. And as he stalked toward the security station to watch this soft, fragile human inevitably fail, He was already preparing the speech he would give to the Empress about why her cubs were still hysterical, and why they now needed to find a new behavioral consultant, preferably one from a species that actually understood proper military protocol. Threl'kax settled into the security station, surrounded by holographic displays showing every angle of the nursery. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Voss, stood beside him, all four arms crossed in what might have been solidarity or possibly judgment. "The human will last 10 minutes, Voss predicted. "Generous," Threl'kax muttered. On screen, Maggie Chen stood in the center of the nursery, hands on hips, surveying the chaos like a general assessing a battlefield. Prince Kale threw another block. It bounced off her shoulder. She did not even flinch. "Okay guys," she announced to the screaming cubs. "Let's try the approved method, shall we?" She pulled out her datapad and began reading in that artificially cheerful voice that every childcare manual recommended. Once upon a time there was a brave little Zentari who learned to share his toys. Prince Thomas made a gagging sound and launched a stuffed animal at her head. "Not a fan of the classics. Got it." Maggie swiped to the next file. "How about music?" The council approved this one personally. She tapped play. Harmonious chimes filled the nursery, mathematically calibrated to soothe juvenile anxiety across 17 different species. Princess Senna phased through the floor, reappeared behind Maggie, and bit her leg. "Well, that's not ideal," Maggie said, checking for blood. "Strike 2 on the approved protocols." Threl'kax leaned forward. At least the human had enough sense to follow procedure, even if the cubs were rejecting it. Perhaps she would file a proper report and recommend pharmaceutical intervention, which is what any sensible consultant would do at this point. Instead, Maggie sat down, right there on the floor, cross-legged, in the middle of the nursery. "What is she doing?" Voss asked. "I have no idea," Threl'kax admitted, feeling his crest feathers rise in alarm. "Hey Kale," Maggie called up to the tower. "You know what's really boring? Tax season on Earth." Prince Kyle stopped mid-throw, block still in hand. "Oh yeah," Maggie continued, like she was sharing the most fascinating information in the galaxy. "Every year humans have to fill out these forms. Pages and pages of form. You have to report how many credits you earned, how many credits you spent, whether you owned property, whether you sold property. Did you have dependents? Did you make charitable donations? What is a tax?" Prince Kale asked, still suspicious but no longer throwing things. "It's money you give to the government so they can build roads and pay for hospitals and schools and stuff. But here's the thing, you can't just give them money. Oh no, that would be too easy. First you have to prove you owe them money by doing math. So much math. And if you mess up the math they send you letters." Princess Senna had stopped phasing. She crept closer, head tilted. "What kind of letters?" she asked. "Very stern letters," Maggie said gravely. "Letters that say things like, 'We have detected a discrepancy in line 47 of Form 109, and then you have to do more math to prove the first math was right, except sometimes it wasn't right so you have to fix it, and send new forms, and then they send you more letters.' This is madness," Lieutenant Voss whispered. "She is traumatizing them with bureaucracy." But Threl'kax noticed something. The cubs had stopped screaming. All 3 of them were now sitting within listening distance of the human, even if they were pretending not to be interested. "And don't even get me started on grocery shopping," Maggie continued, warming to her subject. "You have to make a list, right? But then you get to the store and they've moved everything around again. The bread is where the cereal used to be. The cereal is in the freezer section for some reason, and you need milk, but there are 47 different types of milk. Regular milk, low-fat milk, non-fat milk, whole milk, oat milk, almond milk, soy milk, coconut milk. Why do they make milk from coconuts?" Prince Thomas asked, floating down from where he had been hovering near the ceiling. "Coconuts are not animals." "Excellent question, buddy. Nobody knows. It's one of Earth's great mysteries." Maggie patted the floor beside her. "Want to hear about the self-checkout machines that never work properly?" And then to Threl'kax's absolute horror, all 3 Imperial cubs sat down next to the human. "Commander," Voss said slowly, Is this? Protocol has completely collapsed. Threl'kax finished, but he could not look away from the screen, because for the first time in 15 cycles the cubs were quiet. So then you have to stand in line at the Department of Motor Vehicles, Maggie was saying, her voice taking on that particular drone that Threl'kax recognized from mandatory safety briefings. And the line is always longer than you think it's going to be. You bring a book, maybe some snacks. You make peace with the fact that you're going to be there for hours, plural, just to renew a little plastic card that says you're allowed to operate a vehicle. Prince Kale had laid his head on her knee. Princess Senna was curled against her left side. Prince Thomas had somehow wedged himself under her right arm. They are making physical contact with her, Lieutenant Voss observed, sounding slightly strangled. I have eyes, Lieutenant. Unsanctioned physical contact with an alien who has not completed the full security clearance process. Yes, thank you. I am aware of all of this. Threl'kax's claws tapped against the console. He should stop this. He should march in there right now and restore proper protocol. Prince Kale's breathing had become slow and regular. His scales had shifted to the pale blue color that indicated deep relaxation. And you finally get to the front of the line, Maggie continued, but her words were starting to slur together. And they tell you, oops, sorry, you needed form J47B, not J47A. So you have to go back and fill out a different form and get back in line. And the whole time you're thinking, why can we travel faster than light but we cannot figure out a better system for vehicle registration? Her eyes were closing. Is she entering a dormancy state? Voss asked. Humans call it sleep. They require it daily, sometimes multiple times if they are. Threl'kax trailed off as Maggie's head drooped forward, then slowly tilted to the side. Commander, she is losing consciousness in the presence of the Imperial heirs. I can see that, Lieutenant. Princess Senna made a small, contented chirping sound and snuggled closer to the human's side. Prince Thomas's usual greenish glow dimmed to almost nothing, a sure sign he had entered rest phase. Prince Kale's tail curled around Maggie's ankle, and then, with absolutely no ceremony whatsoever, the human fell completely asleep. Her last words, barely audible through the audio feed, were, "Why do they need 3 different types of registration?" The security station fell absolutely silent. Commander, Voss said after a long moment. Sir, what are your orders? Threl'kax stared at the screen. All 3 cubs were asleep. Actually genuinely asleep. Their vital signs were better than he had seen in weeks. Stress hormones at normal levels. Brain activity showing proper rest cycle patterns. For the first time since their parents had left for the summit, they looked peaceful. And the human, this soft, fragile, completely inappropriate human, was unconscious in the middle of the Imperial Nursery, with the heirs to 7-star systems piled on top of her like a litter of newborn creche hounds. Sir? Voss prompted again. I need a moment to think. Should I wake her? No. 3 other guards in the security station jumped at Threl'kax's volume. He forced his voice lower. No. If we wake her, we wake them. Look at them, Lieutenant. Look at those readings. But protocol states. I know what protocol states. Threl'kax's crest feathers were now fully extended, a sign of severe stress that he had not displayed since the Battle of the Outer Rings. Protocol also states the cubs' welfare is our primary concern, and right now, they are better than they have been in 15 cycles. Another guard, Sergeant Trell, spoke up from her station. Commander, the Empress and her consort are scheduled to make a communication check-in in 3 standard hours. They will want visual confirmation that the cubs are well. 3 hours. The human might wake up before then. Or she might not. Threl'kax had no idea how long human sleep cycles lasted. Could be minutes. Could be hours. His database had information about human combat capabilities, dietary requirements, and atmospheric needs. But absolutely nothing about their sleep patterns. Sir, I could attempt to extract the cubs without disturbing them. Voss offered. I have completed advanced tactical retrieval training. They all looked at the screen. Princess Senna was now partially phased through Maggie's torso. Prince Thomas had somehow levitated himself and the human's arm 3 inches off the ground while remaining asleep. Prince Kale had wrapped both his tail and one arm around Maggie in a grip that looked disturbingly firm. Extraction is not viable, Threl'kax admitted. Then what do we do? Trell asked. Threl'kax straightened his spine, called upon every scrap of military bearing he possessed, and said the words he never thought he would utter. We wait, and we monitor. If she wakes, she wakes. If the cubs wake, we deal with it then. But until something changes, nobody enters that nursery. Nobody disturbs them. Is that understood? Yes, sir, came the chorus of responses, though everyone sounded deeply uncertain. And someone, Threl'kax added, pulling up the human resources database, find out how long humans sleep. 20 minutes later, Threl'kax had assembled an emergency meeting in the corridor outside the nursery. He had kept it small. Lieutenant Voss, Sergeant Trell, Dr. Hickson from Medical, and Communications Officer Brandt, who had the misfortune of being responsible for the upcoming call with the Empress. They were all whispering. We could use a mild sedative gas, Dr. Hickson suggested, her antennae twitching nervously. Keep them all asleep until the human wakes naturally. And if the Empress asks why her children are unconscious? Threl'kax countered. We could tell her the truth? Brandt offered weakly. Oh, excellent plan. Your Majesty, we allowed an unsupervised alien to fall asleep on your children, and now we cannot separate them. Yes, that will go splendidly. We could move the entire pile, Trell suggested, carefully. Very carefully. Put them all in one of the sleep pods. Voss pulled up a hologram showing the current position of all 4 sleeping beings. Princess Senna is 70% phased through the human's body. If we move them, we risk her solidifying in the wrong position. That could be fatal for both of them. Everyone fell silent at that. I do not understand how this happened, Threl'kax muttered, pulling up the medical scans on his wrist display. What is this human doing to them? Dr. Hickson leaned in, her large eyes widening further. Oh, that is fascinating. What? The human is producing some kind of chemical compound. Look here, these airborne molecules. I have never seen this particular combination before, but the cubs are responding to it. Their stress markers are down 47%. Cortisol levels are almost non-existent. She is drugging the Imperial heirs. Threl'kax felt his blood temperature spike. No, nothing like that. It appears to be a natural emission. Pheromones, perhaps. But the structure is unusual. Wait, let me cross-reference with the human biological database. Dr. Hickson tapped rapidly at her datapad. Ah, yes. Humans produce elevated levels of oxytocin during physical contact with offspring or bonded pack members. This causes a corresponding reduction in stress hormones and promotes feelings of safety and attachment. The cubs are not her offspring, Threl'kax pointed out. No, but humans are pack animals. Social creatures. They form attachments across species lines. It is quite remarkable, actually. Their evolution as persistent predators required extensive cooperation. Doctor, I do not need a biology lesson. I need solutions. Right? Yes. Well, the simple fact is that the cubs have bonded with her, at least temporarily, and her presence is chemically soothing to them. If we separate them now, they will likely wake distressed, more distressed than they have been for the past 2 weeks. Dr. Hickson checked her readings. Possibly, yes. The sudden removal of the calming stimulus could cause a rebound effect. Threl'kax felt a headache forming behind his primary eyes. How long do humans typically remain in this sleep state? I have no idea. I am a xenobiologist, not a human specialist. We have humans on this ship, Brandt said suddenly. 3 of them in engineering. We could ask them. Finally, a reasonable suggestion. Do it. Discreetly. 10 minutes later they had engineer Martin Okoye on a secure comlink, looking confused about why command staff was asking him about nap time. So, yeah, humans sleep about 8 hours a night on average, Martin explained. But naps? Those can be anywhere from 20 minutes to a couple hours depending on how tired you are. Why? Is Maggie okay? She is fine, Threl'kax said quickly. She is merely resting. With the cubs. Oh, she got them down? Nice. Those kids have been screaming for days. Whole ship's been talking about it. Yes, she got them down. And now we cannot. She is still. They are all sleeping. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Wait. You mean she fell asleep with them? That is correct. Martin started laughing. Actually laughing. Oh man. That's the most human thing I've heard all month. Yeah, that happens. Kids fall asleep on you and then you're just stuck there. My sister has 3 kids. She says it's like being pinned by cats. You just have to wait it out. Wait it out? Threl'kax repeated slowly. Sure, I mean you could wake her up, but that seems mean. She's probably exhausted if she just crashed like that. How long has she been out? 43 minutes. Okay, so she might sleep another hour, maybe 2 if she's really tired. Just let her rest. It's not like it's hurting anything, right? Threl'kax looked at Lieutenant Voss, who had all 4 hands pressed to his face. He looked at Dr. Hickson, whose antennae had drooped in what he recognized as second-hand embarrassment. He looked at Sergeant Trell, who was very deliberately studying the ceiling. Right? Threl'kax said faintly. Not hurting anything. Cool. Hey, tell Maggie I said congrats on the nap. That's like winning the lottery in childcare. The comm link disconnected. 2 hours, Brandt said into the silence. The Empress calls in 2 hours and 14 minutes. I am aware, communications officer. Perhaps, and I say this with great respect, Commander, but perhaps we should just tell them the truth. The cubs are resting peacefully for the first time in weeks. That is good news, is it not? Threl'kax wanted to argue. He wanted to find some regulation, some protocol that would make this situation make sense according to proper military standards. But when he looked at the security feed at 3 peacefully sleeping cubs cuddled around a very ordinary human who was probably dreaming about tax forms, he had to admit that Brandt had a point. Fine, he said, we wait. But I want 6 guards on this corridor at all times. Nobody enters, nobody disturbs them. And someone please find me something strong to drink. You do not drink, sir, Voss reminded him. Then perhaps it is time I started. Word spread through the ship faster than a hull breach alarm. Threl'kax had not authorized any announcements. He had specifically ordered discretion. But somehow within the first hour of what was now being called the nap, guards from 3 different shifts had found reasons to pass by the nursery corridor. I need to inspect the security panels, claimed one. Routine patrol route, insisted another. I heard there was a situation, admitted a third, more honestly. Threl'kax assigned proper rotations because if his entire security force was going to abandon their posts to gawk at a sleeping human, they might as well do it in an organized fashion. First watch went to Corporal Drent, a Vaxian warrior with 12 years of combat experience and a scar across his throat from where an assassin had nearly succeeded. Drent took one look at the security feed, went very still, and then made a sound Threl'kax had never heard him make before. Corporal, are you functional? Yes, sir. Drent's voice cracked. It is just my younglings are the same age as Prince Thomas. I have not seen them in 6 months. And the way he is holding on to her arm, that is exactly how my daughter, the warrior stopped, wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. My apologies, Commander. No apology necessary, Threl'kax said quietly, because what else could he say? Second watch was Sergeant Prill, who had the distinction of being the most decorated sharpshooter in the fleet. She lasted 15 minutes before Threl'kax caught her taking photographs. Sergeant, what are you doing? Security documentation, sir. She did not even have the decency to look guilty. This is a significant event involving the Imperial heirs. It should be recorded for the official record. You have taken 47 photographs in 15 minutes. Very thorough documentation, sir. That one is zoomed in on Prince Kael's face. Detail work, Commander. Very important for security analysis. Threl'kax considered confiscating her device, but then he noticed she had captured an image of Princess Senna with her thumb in her mouth, looking more peaceful than he had ever seen her, and he simply could not bring himself to delete it. Send me copies, he heard himself say, for the official record. Of course, sir. The real crisis came when Tactical Officer Shen arrived. Shen was a Korvath, built like a mobile weapons platform, with a reputation for breaking enemy soldiers in half with her bare hands. She had fought in 4 major conflicts and never showed emotion beyond mild irritation. She took one look at the security feed and burst into tears. "They look so small," she sobbed, her massive frame shaking. "So soft. Why are they so small and soft? They are children, Tactical Officer. But look at them. Look at how they trust her. They feel safe." Shen wiped her face with both hands, smearing bioluminescent tears across her cheeks. "When did we stop making our children feel safe like that? When did we replace comfort with optimization protocols? That is not a question I am qualified to answer. My son sleeps in a medically monitored pod. He has done so since he was an infant. It tracks his vital signs and adjusts his environment for optimal development. I thought I was giving him the best care possible, but he has never looked like that." She pointed at Prince Kale, who had shifted in his sleep to wrap both arms around Maggie's waist. "Never." Threl'kax had no response to that, so he simply stood beside Shen while she cried, and pretended not to notice that his own vision was becoming blurry. By hour 2, there were 8 guards in the corridor, not assigned, not on duty, just there. Lieutenant Voss had started a betting pool on when Maggie would wake up. The pot was already up to 300 credits. 2 hours, 6 minutes, guessed Corporal Drent. 1 hour, 43 minutes, Sergeant Prill countered. Humans are efficient. She will wake before the Empress calls. 3 hours, 12 minutes, said a young private whose name Threl'kax could not recall. She looks really tired. All bets are official, logged, and binding, Voss announced with the seriousness of someone conducting a military briefing. Winner takes all. Closest time without going over. This is completely inappropriate, Threl'kax said. Would you like to place a bet, Commander? Threl'kax absolutely should not. It was undignified, unprofessional, completely against regulations regarding gambling on duty. 2 hours, 31 minutes, he said, transferring 50 credits to the pot. On screen, Maggie shifted slightly in her sleep. All 8 guards leaned forward as one, holding their breath. Princess Senna murmured something and phased a bit deeper through the human's ribcage. Prince Thomas's levitation wobbled, dropping him and Maggie's arm another inch before stabilizing. Prince Kale's tail tightened its grip. Maggie settled back into stillness without waking. Everyone exhaled. She is tougher than she looks, Trell observed. A Zentari child phasing through your organs would wake most species. Humans are persistence predators, Dr. Hickson said, having joined the vigil at some point. They evolved to keep going long after other species would stop. Apparently that includes sleeping through minor internal violations. Is she in pain? Threl'kax asked sharply. No. Senna is not solid enough to cause damage. It probably just feels strange. But the fact that the human is not waking suggests an extremely high tolerance for discomfort. Dr. Hickson made a note on her data pad. Remarkable species, really? She told the cubs about tax forms, Threl'kax said, still watching the screen, and grocery shopping, and vehicle registration. I am sorry. What? Those were the topics she discussed. Boring administrative tasks from her homeworld. The cubs found it soothing. Sergeant Prill made a thoughtful sound. So she bored them to sleep? That is tactical brilliance. Using the enemy's own attention span against them. The cubs are not the enemy, Sergeant. Of course not, sir. Poor choice of words. Prill took another photograph. But you have to admit it worked better than any approved protocol. Threl'kax could not argue with that. He found himself thinking about his own offspring, grown now and serving in the fleet. He had raised them according to all the best practices, structured schedules, educational optimization, emotional regulation training. They were fine soldiers, excellent soldiers, but he could not remember the last time he had simply held them while they slept. Commander? Voss said quietly. Are you well? Yes, Lieutenant. Threl'kax cleared his throat, grateful that his species could not produce tears. I am perfectly functional. Of course, sir. They stood together in silence. 8 trained warriors watching a human sleep with 3 alien cubs piled on top of her, and absolutely none of them willing to admit how much it affected them. The betting pool climbed to 500 credits. The alert chimed through Threl'kax's comm at hour 2:47. Commander, this is Docking Bay Control. The Imperial shuttle has just entered approach vector. They are requesting immediate clearance. Threl'kax's stomach dropped. Both of them. Repeat that, Control. The Empress and Emperor have returned early from the summit. They are requesting correction. They are demanding immediate access to the nursery level. Every guard in the corridor turned to look at Threl'kax with identical expressions of panic. How long until they dock? He asked, already knowing he did not have enough time. 6 minutes, Commander. 6 minutes to explain why the Imperial heirs were currently sleeping under, on top of, and partially through an unconscious human. 6 minutes to justify why his guards had been crying and gambling and taking photographs instead of maintaining proper military protocol. 6 minutes to save his career. All personnel, standard greeting formation, he ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. And somebody please ensure the human does not wake up in the next 5 minutes. Should we wake her after the greeting? Thus, asked. I have no idea, Lieutenant. I am making this up as I go. The Empress arrived first, as she always did. Zarathil moved like liquid mercury, her form shifting between solid and phase states with unconscious grace. She was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a born warrior who had unified 3 feuding species through strategic marriage, and when necessary strategic violence. The Emperor, Kelamar, followed 2 steps behind, as was traditional in his culture. Where his mate was fluid motion, he was solid strength, his crystalline form refracting the corridor lights into rainbow patterns. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who could level a building with his mind and chose not to most of the time. They were, in Threl'kax's professional opinion, the most formidable ruling pair in Alliance history, which made disappointing them absolutely terrifying. Commander Threl'kax, the Empress said, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Why did you not respond to our communication request? Your Majesty, I apologize. There was a situation. Where are my children? The Emperor's voice resonated through the corridor, making the walls vibrate slightly. They are safe, Your Majesty. They are in the nursery. They are sleeping. The Empress's eyes narrowed. They are sleeping? Voluntarily? During waking hours? Yes, Your Majesty. And this required radio silence because... How did one explain this? How did one possibly find the words? Perhaps their Majesties would prefer to see for themselves, Lieutenant Voss suggested, which was either very brave or very stupid. The Empress moved past Threl'kax without waiting for permission. The Emperor followed. The entire guard detail fell in behind them because nobody wanted to miss this. They reached the nursery viewing window. The Empress looked inside. She stopped walking. What? She said slowly. Is that? That is Maggie Chen, Your Majesty. The interspecies behavioral consultant we hired. She was. The cubs were distressed, and she. Threl'kax gave up on finding a diplomatic explanation. She told them boring stories about Earth bureaucracy, until they fell asleep, and then she also fell asleep, and we could not separate them without waking them, and they have been resting peacefully for 2 hours, and 49 minutes, which is the longest continuous rest period they have achieved since Your Majesties departed for the summit. The Empress stared through the window. Prince Kale had his head on Maggie's shoulder, drooling slightly. Princess Senna was still phased halfway through the human's torso. Prince Thomas had somehow twisted completely upside down, but remained firmly attached to Maggie's side. She fell asleep, the Empress repeated. Yes, Your Majesty. On the floor. Yes, Your Majesty. With our children? Yes, Your Majesty. The Emperor moved closer to the window, his expression unreadable. Is Senna inside the human? Partially, Your Majesty. Dr. Hickson assures me there is no danger to either party. And why? The Empress asked, her voice very quiet now. Have multiple members of your guard detail been crying? I can see the tear tracks, Commander. Threl'kax wanted to sink through the floor. The scene was emotionally affecting. Your Majesty, The Empress turned to look at him fully, then she looked back at her children, then to Threl'kax. Absolute shock. Her eyes began to shimmer with moisture. "Oh," she whispered. "Oh, look at them." "My love?" The Emperor sounded concerned. "When was the last time they looked like that, Kale? When was the last time they felt safe enough to sleep like that? All tangled together, holding on to someone." The Emperor studied his children more closely. His crystalline structure began to shift colors, refracting softer, warmer tones. "I do not. I cannot remember. We have given them everything," the Empress continued, her voice breaking. "The best education, the finest medical care, every advantage our alliance can provide. But we have not given them this. We have not given them," she gestured at the sleeping pile, "permission to just be small. They are heirs to 7-star systems," the Emperor said, but he sounded uncertain. "They must be prepared for their responsibilities. They are 4, 3 and 2 years old." The Empress pressed her hand against the window, "and they are sleeping better with a strange human on a hard floor than they ever have in their optimized sleep pods." Threl'kax watched his rulers stare at their children and felt something shift in the corridor. Sergeant Prill was crying again. Corporal Drent had turned away to compose himself. Even Lieutenant Voss looked suspiciously misty. "My grandmother used to hold me when I could not sleep," the Emperor said quietly. "She would hum old songs and let me curl against her until her arm went numb. I had forgotten that until now, we became so advanced," the Empress murmured. "So efficient, so optimized. And somewhere along the way we forgot that children need more than optimal conditions. They need," she paused, searching for the word. "Boring stories about taxes," Threl'kax suggested. The Empress laughed, a sound somewhere between joy and grief. "Yes, Commander. Apparently they need boring stories about taxes." She turned away from the window, wiped her eyes and said, "Nobody wakes them. We wait." "Yes, Your Majesty." The Emperor and Empress joined the vigil, standing with their guards, watching their children sleep in a pile with a human who was probably having dreams about grocery stores. And for the first time in his long military career, Threl'kax thought perhaps protocol was not always the most important thing after all. Maggie woke up with a crick in her neck, something heavy on her chest, and the distinct feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. Her eyes opened slowly. The first thing she saw was the ceiling of the nursery. The second thing she saw was approximately 15 faces staring at her through the observation window, including, "Oh no, no, no," the Empress and Emperor. "Oh crud," Maggie whispered. Prince Tomoe stirred at the sound of her voice, yawned, and floated up about 6 inches before settling back down. Princess Senna made a happy chirping noise and finally phased completely out of Maggie's internal organs, which felt deeply weird. Prince Kale stretched, smiled up at Maggie with sleepy eyes, and said, "You stopped talking about the grocery store." "Yeah, buddy. I kind of passed out. Sorry about that." "It is okay. That was the best sleep I have had in forever." Which was sweet, truly. But Maggie was fairly certain she was about to be thrown out an airlock for unauthorized napping with the royal family. She carefully extracted herself from the cub pile, every joint protesting. How long had she been out? 2 hours? 3? Her mouth tasted like she had been chewing cotton, and her left leg had gone completely numb. The cubs were waking up properly now, all 3 of them stretching and yawning and looking significantly more cheerful than they had in weeks. Princess Senna immediately started babbling about something in her own language. Prince Thomas began floating toys around the room, his usual chaotic energy clearly restored. Prince Kale just wrapped his arms around Maggie's leg and held on. "So," Maggie said to the window full of staring aliens, "I know this looks bad." The door opened. The Empress entered, followed by the Emperor, followed by what appeared to be half the ship's security force. Maggie stood up straight, trying to look professional despite the drool on her shoulder and the small prince attached to her leg. "Your Majesty, I can explain. The cubs were distressed and conventional methods were not working, so I attempted an alternative approach based on Earth childcare techniques, specifically the application of boring subject matter to induce voluntary rest states. And I did not intend to fall asleep myself," But apparently I was more tired than I realized, and I understand this is a massive protocol violation, and I take full responsibility. The Empress held up one hand. Maggie stopped talking. You put my children to sleep, the Empress said. Yes, Your Majesty. I am very sorry. They slept for 3 hours, peacefully, without waking once. Yes. And you accomplished this by telling them about Earth tax procedures? Maggie felt her face heat up. And grocery shopping, and the Department of Motor Vehicles. I know it is not a standard technique. The Empress started crying. Maggie froze. Behind the Empress Emperor's eyes were also leaking. Commander Threl'kax had turned away, his shoulders shaking. At least half the guards were openly sobbing. Did I do something wrong? Maggie asked, genuinely panicked now. Why is everyone crying? You did nothing wrong, the Empress said, wiping her face. You did everything right. Then why? Because, the Emperor said, his voice thick with emotion, you gave our children something we have failed to provide. You made them feel safe. Maggie looked around at the crying aliens, the peaceful cubs, and the Empress who was now pulling out what appeared to be a ceremonial medal from absolutely nowhere. I am very confused, Maggie admitted. Maggie Chen of Earth, the Empress said formally, still crying, for exceptional service to the Imperial family, and for demonstrating that sometimes the old ways are better than optimal efficiency. I hereby award you the Star of Compassion, the highest civilian honor in the Alliance. She pinned the medal to Maggie's rumpled shirt. I just took a nap, Maggie said weakly. Sergeant Prill started sobbing harder. I really do not understand what is happening right now. You will, the Empress said, pulling Maggie into a hug that smelled like ozone and jasmine. Thank you for caring for my babies. Behind them, Prince Kael tugged on Commander Threl'kax's armor. Why is everyone leaking? Is this normal? Yes, little prince, Threl'kax said, wiping his own eyes. Apparently it is. 3 weeks later, Maggie found herself standing in front of 47 alien childcare specialists, trying to explain the concept of just sitting on the floor and being boring. So you do not use the approved stimulation protocols? Asked a Zentari caregiver, her 3 eyes blinking in confusion. Nope. And you do not maintain the recommended physical distance? Definitely not. And you intentionally discuss topics that have no educational value whatsoever? That is correct. I once spent 20 minutes describing how to organize a spice cabinet. The key is to be so monumentally dull that sleep becomes preferable to listening. The caregivers looked at each other, clearly disturbed by this information. I know it sounds weird, Maggie continued, but sometimes kids do not need optimization. They just need to feel safe enough to be bored. And boredom, my friends, is the gateway to sleep. In the back of the room, Commander Threl'kax watched with what might have been amusement. He had appointed himself Maggie's personal security detail, which he suspected was less about actual danger and more about the fact that he had become weirdly protective of her after the nap. You will get yourself killed with that attitude, he had told her just yesterday. I survived 3 hours with a kid phased through my pancreas. I think I can handle myself. That is not reassuring, Maggie Chen. But he had started bringing her tea during her breaks, which she was pretty sure was the alien equivalent of friendship. The cubs, predictably, had become absolutely insufferable about the whole thing. They now refused to sleep unless Maggie was present. Not near them, not in the next room. Physically present and preferably touching at least one of them. This is not sustainable, Dr. Hickson had pointed out during the medical review. I am aware, Maggie had replied, watching Prince Thomas float anxiously around the nursery at what should have been bedtime. Perhaps we could record your voice. Play it during rest periods? They had tried that. Prince Kael had cried for an hour straight, asking where the real Maggie was. So now Maggie lived in the royal quarters, her salary had tripled, and she spent at least 4 hours a day discussing the intricacies of Earth bureaucracy to 3 small aliens, who hung on her every word like she was revealing the secrets of the universe. Tell us again about the form that requires another form to process the first form, Princess Senna would beg. That is the best story, Prince Thomas would agree. Maggie had somehow become the most important person on the flagship by virtue of being extremely boring and willing to nap in inappropriate locations. The seminar wrapped up with the caregivers looking both enlightened and deeply uncomfortable with the breakdown of proper protocol. Maggie suspected half of them would never implement her techniques and the other half would revolutionize childcare across their species. As the room cleared, Threl'kax approached her station. "That went well," he said. "3 of them looked like I had suggested ritual sacrifice." "Only 3? I count that as a success." He paused, then added, "I owe you an apology, Maggie Chen." "For what?" "I thought you were soft, weak. A poor choice for protecting the Imperial heirs." "I mean, I am pretty soft. Have you felt human skin? We are basically just meat balloons. And yet you allowed a child to phase through your organs without waking. You endured 3 hours on a hard floor with 60 pounds of cubs using you as furniture. You have survived 2 weeks of Princess Senna practicing her phasing skills on your body at random intervals." Threl'kax's crest feathers rose in what she had learned was respect. "Humans may not have armor or claws or natural weapons, but you are tougher than I gave you credit for." Maggie considered this. "I mean, I just wanted a nap. The cubs were there. It seemed rude to move them." "You just wanted a nap," Threl'kax repeated slowly. "Yeah. You accidentally created an interstellar incident, reduced my entire security force to tears, caused the Empress to question centuries of cultural advancement, and fundamentally changed Alliance childcare protocols because you wanted a nap. When you put it that way, it sounds way more dramatic than it was." Threl'kax made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Come. The cubs will be expecting their bedtime discussion of postal service regulations." "Oh good. I have a great story about certified mail tracking." They walked together through the corridors of the Eternal Dominion, an elite warrior and a very tired human, while crew members nodded respectfully to the woman who had accomplished what military might never could. She had gotten the Imperial cubs to go to sleep. In the Imperial archives, a new image had been added to the official record. It showed 3 small cubs curled around a sleeping human on the nursery floor, peaceful and safe. The caption read, "The nap that united 7 species." Below that, in smaller text, "Approved protocol, boring stories and physical comfort. See Specialist Chen for implementation details." And in even smaller text, added by someone with a sense of humor, "Do not attempt without proper training in Earth tax law." Maggie had asked them to remove that last part. They had refused. Apparently she was stuck with her reputation now. Maggie Chen, master of sleep, teller of boring stories, the human who made the Empress cry. She still thought everyone had overreacted. But the cubs were happy, her paycheck was enormous, and she got to take naps as part of her official duties. All in all, she had had worse jobs, even if people kept crying about it for reasons she would never fully understand.